Welcome back to Rocket Talk. My name is Johnny, and this is episode 54. As always, we're here with Connor.
Hello.
Hello, and unfortunately this week we had to fire Luke. So
A lot of us are getting fired recently.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago I was fired. Last week, Connor, you were fired, and we've both been rehired since. But unfortunately, we had to fire Luke because he doesn't use the Oxford comma. And that's just a shame because he is wrong.
He is very wrong on that. I agree with him that it shouldn't be used, but then I agree with you that it should be used just for convenience sake.
I might have to half fire you as well. But
so cut me to part-time?
I want to also give a big shout out to Court for being on last week on our podcast on such short notice too. So thank you again, Court. You are amazing.
You are too good for this world.
Yes, absolutely. And as a replacement for Luke's firing, we have a special guest, a first-time guest for our listeners. This is our friend Jeff. Say hello, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
It's good to have you on.
It's good to be on. Thank you for having me.
Well,
it's been a long time coming, too, because for some of you who have followed us, Jeff was on Nerdmageddon as a regular guest a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
It was kind of like the awkward teen phase of RocketBomb. But yes, here we are, 54 episodes in, and honestly, I think 54 is too high of a number to have not had you on before, up until this point, Jeff.
Agreed. Well, thank you. I would have loved to have been on episode 52. Little nod to DC.
Oh, yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah. I'd have been all about that.
Well, first thing we're going to do is what we always do is our frequent segment, one of my favorites, it's a Bev Check. So, Jeff, what are you drinking right now?
Well, right now I have water in a Body Armor bottle. I was thinking about just getting a case of the Midwest finest beer, Busch Light, and having it within arm's reach, just in case I got parched and to keep conversation lively. Hot
Definitely.
takes after a while. But I figured in the meantime, start off with water, and then maybe if I get a little parched beyond that, I can step it up.
I support that decision. Connor, what about you?
So I am going all fancy-like. I've got a California white wine called Lease Fitch. It's a Sauvignon Blanc, and it is tasty. I don't even normally like white wines. I'm more of a red wine drinker if I'm having wine, but this is really good. Em picked it out for her little birthday celebration this weekend.
Ooh, happy birthday to Emily.
So we can drink on here.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
We drink a lot on here.
Johnny and I had very different responses to yours. He's like, ooh, that looks good. And I'm like, ooh, we can drink on here.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I think Luke drinks every week, so.
Yeah, we always have some sort of alcohol. Someone's drinking alcohol.
So most likely I'm going to probably step it up a little bit later on. But
please do. If it keeps the conversation, great, then I am all for it. Okay, so, well, I didn't say what I was drinking. I have a Capri Sun because that was the only unique thing that I had in my fridge. And it was my last one. Yeah, well, before we had the audio rolling, I realized as I was getting my Capri Sun that it didn't come with a straw. I couldn't find it anywhere, and just the last one that I had didn't come with a straw. So I was going to cut it open with some scissors and pour it into a cup, but I didn't have any scissors either. I couldn't find them, so I had to use a knife to stab the pouch open and then pour the drink into the cup. And I
truly professionals here on Rocket Talk.
Yeah, exactly. We're all adults, especially me. Don't ever doubt it. So let's move on to what you doing. As you both know, and many of our listeners know, that there is a special movie that's coming out on Thursday on HBO, and it's Justice League, and it is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Ooh, yeah. A lot of us are trying to pretend that the original never happened, And in about 4 days at the time of recording, we can officially pretend that there was no previous version of Justice League.
The only time I've seen this was in theaters. I have not seen it since. And I really, really want to forget it. Because I get jealous of people. They're like, oh, I've never seen Justice League. I'm like, lucky? It doesn't have to take up the bandwidth in your brain?
I think I was actually with you. I think I was actually with Connor. I think actually all three of us.
Yeah, I think all three of us were together.
And then Joel Harmer was there too.
That's right.
I believe so. There's a whole group.
There's probably a whole pack of us.
Was Court there?
It was
Court
us three, Double D, and Mejia.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
They're also with us because we'd all been looking forward to seeing it. So we all kind of herded into the hangar. Rest in peace.
What are your thoughts on the original, Jeff? And then what are you looking forward to most about the new version of it?
All right, so my thoughts on the original. While it wasn't terrible, it wasn't. It could have been far worse. That being, because I could see what they were trying to do. I think a little bit. It kind of felt like the animated DC movie that Justice League did, where they all come together to fight Darkseid. It had a little bit of that feel, just in terms of how quickly they put everyone together. But I do feel like it was kind of hampered by the fact that it was cut to such a short screen time, and the running times, I believe it's either 2 hours flat or 2 hours and 1 minute. So it didn't really have the chance to fully flesh out. And then I would say on top of that, obviously there were difficulties in production of it from what I remember.
Yep.
Zack Snyder had some family tragedy going on, some really heavy stuff going on, and he had to leave the project, and they brought in Joss Whedon. And while Joss Whedon can make a good movie, we've all seen the Avengers and love it, but that style doesn't match the tone and framework that Snyder had put forth up to that point.
Yep, and it was very visible in the final product.
Yeah, I would say in terms of, especially what kind of stood out to me was the tonality of and how they portrayed Batman in Justice League as opposed to in BVS, because Zack Snyder's version of Batman, Zack Snyder's Batfleck was actually incredible in my opinion. That was probably the most comic accurate Batman we've seen to date. But then in Justice League, he kind of changes tones. He's a little bit more awkward, and he's kind of cracking more jokes. And it just, while it still wasn't bad, it wasn't what it was in BVS. So
it really seemed like it was trying to copy the Avengers formula in some parts.
Well, they brought in the director from the first Avengers, So, he thought, well, I made a mega box office hit with the Avengers using this approach and this style, but it doesn't match the tone and the framework that had been set forth. It's kind of a square peg in a round hole type thing.
Yes. Yeah.
It felt forced and just not what it was supposed to be.
Well, that seemed to be the general consensus from the get-go. Is a lot of DC fans were saying this seems really, really rushed just to compete with the Avengers.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty accurate and pretty widespread sentiment. And what I really wished was that they weren't in a hurry. DC and Marvel, they're both awesome in their own right. Marvel actually they've done an excellent approach to building a massive overarching universe.
Yeah,
absolutely. But it had been slowly laying groundwork, just piece by little piece, into a big mosaic or collage that formed a beautiful finished product.
Yes.
Yeah. It definitely, it's evident that Marvel took a lot more time than DC did, and Justice League I think is the biggest example of that. The original. Yeah. So what are you most excited about then with what's coming? What do you think is going to be some of the big changes? Maybe what do you think they'll cut? What do you think they'll add? That sort of thing.
All right. Well, I think in terms of addition and subtraction, I would say addition maybe they add a little bit more of that really dark, really angry, really brooding Batman back in. You know, if he cracks maybe the unintentional joke here and there, you know, something really dry and just kind of you know, at somebody, that's okay. But I need more of the attitude from the first one.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd also like to see potentially members of the Lantern Corps, Green Lantern Corps.
Yes, please.
I obviously want to see the addition of Darkseid and what he looks like in it. Deathstroke. You know, Joe Manganiello looks like he could probably play a really good Deathstroke. Really, I'm honestly curious to see more of, and this may sound kind of goofy, but Jared Leto's Joker.
Yeah.
I want to see his actual take on it, because so far we've seen, maybe 10 minutes of screen time with him altogether. Like, not enough to really form a good concrete opinion of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Suicide Squad heavily promoted Joker, and we know that he's going to be in this film as well, Zack Snyder's version of Justice League. So hopefully we do get more screen time. I think it's just going to be, it looks like it's going to be one standoff scene, but who knows? Maybe it's going to be, not like a huge part of it, but maybe he'll have more screen time than Suicide Squad. That's not saying much, but, you know, with the movie being 4 hours long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Joker was kind of a victim of false advertising, because, you know, everyone's conversation is, what's the new Joker going to be? And then the marketing team felt like they had to lean on that to get butts in seats at the movie theaters. But he was only a minor nuisance every now and then. And if you give him 10 minutes of screen time, it better be the best 10 minutes we've ever seen. But no, like, they just made it look like he was supposed to be the main guy for the main antagonist for the entire movie. Yeah,
for Suicide Squad, that was what I think all of us were led to believe, was that he was supposed to be like one of the centerpieces. You know, he's supposed to be like a linchpin, big, integral part of the movie, but he really wasn't. Like, I mean, yeah, he was there kind of throughout the movie, but they really downplayed him, I think. And another couple things with Joker that I really hope, you know, maybe they change is, and it looks like they have, is his aesthetic. You know,
yes.
I'm not really sure how to accurately describe the opinion I have on it. You know, like, I can see maybe a little bit of ink, but, like, you know, with the damaged on the forehead, and then, like,
that was a little cringy, yeah.
The forehead tattoo for me was just
dumb.
It wasn't. It was totally unnecessary. Damaged? Yes, we know you're damaged. You're the Joker.
Yeah,
like, that's putting it mildly. You know?
Yeah, it's like a wannabe goth. However, like, I don't think Jared Leto did a bad job portraying the Joker. I just don't like the version of Joker he was told to play. I think Jared Leto did an amazing job portraying the type of Joker he was asked to portray. And I think he's got the chops
crazy
to be
gangster.
Yes, I think he's got the acting chops to be a good Joker. However, with the direction he was giving, it just didn't work. Come on, especially after Dark Knight Rises, you have to follow
Heath Ledger.
Thank you, Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, I was about to say Jack Nicholson, but that's
he's got to follow him too, man. I mean, like,
another really great one.
But those are tough acts to follow. I mean, even Cesar Romero's.
Yeah, Cesar Romero, one of the OGs.
Yeah, Cesar Romero's Joker, you know, he was good in his own right, and Jack Nicholson was good in his own right, and Heath Ledger, obviously, you know,
Oscar performance.
Yeah, completely just changed the game for not only Joker, but, like, movie villains across the board.
Yes.
So to try and follow that, you know, I mean, good luck. You know, that's...
Exactly. And no matter what, even though I think Jared Leto did a good job portraying kind of a kooky Joker, he'll always be the guy who is not Heath Ledger. He will always be the guy who has to follow up and be like, oh, hey, you did good, but you're not Heath Ledger. So even if he were to portray a really good Joker that people liked, he will always be the guy following Heath Ledger's footsteps and never be able to live up to it.
Well, and I gotta say, while we're still on Joker, you know, now he's also got to measure up to another amazing performance by Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. Because, I mean, the movie Joker was, in my opinion, I thought it was fantastic.
I really liked it.
Yeah, it was very good. Very, very good.
It kind of blew my mind a little bit, you know. So he's got to stack up to that, too, which, I mean, holy shit. You know, like, those are some seriously tough acts to follow. That's world heavyweight that he's trying to...
Yeah, so his use, if he keeps this type of aesthetic, but if they can use it in the correct way, I think I see why they want to go with that flavor, the gangster kind of thing. I see it, because, I mean, Heath Ledger, his Joker had gang members, and he had his posse and stuff. It just wasn't so mob-like with this, because he was kind of actively against the mob in Dark Knight Rises. But, like, I see where they're trying to go with it, and, you know, if they can utilize it in the correct way, you know, I think it fits. Yeah, but we've been on the Joker thing for a while. Even though it's going to be 4 hours long. So with Endgame being 3 hours in like 15 minutes or something like that, almost 3.5 hours, close to it, and then this movie being 4 hours, do you guys see 3-hour movies kind of becoming more mainstream?
I certainly do. I mean, yeah, especially with superhero stuff.
I think with superheroes, yes, so long as they keep doing well. Their performance record is going to be kind of paramount to it, you know, especially if it's big culminations, you know, because, I mean, Endgame was, well, that was a big crossover event. This should also be, you know, a big culminating crossover event. And if the story is captivating and it's a good film, I'll sit there for 4 hours. I mean, I sat through Endgame for, you know, its entirety multiple times in theaters and was still just gobsmacked and in complete awe of it at the end every time. So if the story is good and they can land this, I think that while it's not going to become incredibly normal, we will see more of them.
Yes.
Yeah, it almost seems strange to think of a 90-minute superhero film at this point. Like,
yeah, it kind of does, because like the stories are getting bigger and better, and I think crossover events and special events are going to be the main reason we see 3-hour movies. But like, if you give me a solo film of just even my favorite superheroes, I'm expecting 2.5 hours, because that's what I want. Yeah. That's what I'm going to pay for.
Absolutely.
I feel like any more, especially with how intricate and how detail oriented these movies have become, you know, unless it's an animated movie, you do need that 2 hours, or, you know, somewhere around, I would say minimum 100 minutes, but probably that 120 minute to 145 minute, you know, I feel like that's a good space to work within, you know, to where it's for a standalone hero movie that's not too long to where you're going to start losing the audience or it's going to drag, but also enough time to give you room to flesh some of the details out and all the characters out and make it all work in a coherent fashion.
Yes,
absolutely. So moving on, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about WandaVision for you, Jeff. Connor and I, we talked about it. No, actually, you weren't here either last week, Connor. So Luke and I talked about it last week. But Connor and Jeff, tell us your thoughts on the season as a whole.
Jeff, I'll let you go first.
All right, my thoughts on WandaVision. You know, at first going into it, I was a bit apprehensive. Seeing the trailer and the previews for it, you know, I was kind of scratching my head as to, like, okay, Vision's alive. How is this a thing? How's this going to work? You know, black and white. You know, was a little bit apprehensive about it at first, but I felt like it progressed quickly enough and smoothly enough, and the pacing was right to where, you know, it explained itself in due time and the chronology of everything. So, and I realized that it almost had like a House of M vibe a little bit, and that's a storyline where, if I remember right, Scarlet Witch basically just says no more mutants, and then poof, that's a thing. So, you know, she creates that reality. You know, she creates a new reality where Vision's alive. I want him back. And then, poof, there he is. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm not as well versed in the comics as you are, not nearly as much. So it's always interesting to hear like, what some of these like stories could have been or maybe slightly based on. And from what you said, that's what this seems to be. Connor, what about you? What were some of your thoughts on it?
So, I mean, much like Jeff, I really had no idea what I was getting into, and I really didn't have a plan of watching this because, I mean, I told you a long time ago, Johnny, that I was getting kind of superheroed out. That's a lot of our content from Nerdmageddon because it's Infinity War was kind of the big thing that we were all ramping up for during college, but. And it just seems there's a lot of content to keep up for, and I get like anxious. I'm like, oh my gosh, so much content I have to keep up on. But I sat down one day, and you and Luke had been pushing me to watch it because it's just so good, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll check it out in one day. So I just turned it on. I'm just like, it's a cute little 50s sitcom, and then you started seeing the screen like fizzle, and I'm like, oh wait, what's that? And so the 50 sitcom thing was the first episode. And I was like, you know what? That was cute. I'm going to watch the second episode. And then you start hearing the radio chatter. And they're like, what's going on here? And so I just find myself watching 4 episodes. And I'm like, where did the time go? It's so good. So it just became immediately addicting. And there's just no way I'm going back. I'm kind of cheating a little bit because I have 15 minutes left of the last episode. And yeah, dude. I was watching it right before we started recording, so I'm just like, I need to get going. But like, this is a great episode. I love the take on it. It's a fresh take on the superhero genre, to the point where even I'm feeling like it's not as cookie cutter as the MCU has gotten.
No, and that's honestly it's kind of refreshing because it's a new angle that we really haven't seen before. And really in any in either the MCU or DC, this is something new. This is something very unique.
Yes, and I think it's what the MCU needs, because I know they like to do their phases. But, I mean, tell me you don't see the same jokes in the Guardians of the Galaxy films as you do in, like, Thor Ragnarok or Doctor Strange and you see in Iron Man 3. It's, like, there's a lot of the same things.
I can tell that they're going to use Disney Plus as a good way to experiment, but also a good way to find their safe spot as well. Because while WandaVision was a lot of... new material, like the whole sitcom thing, and of course as it went on, it became slightly more and more typical MCU stuff, but there was still that overarching the fact that it's a TV series at all is big. Outside of Jessica Jones and the other Netflix shows, there's only been a handful of others that were canon, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Immortals, but or is that what it's called? I can't remember. Maybe not Immortals, but something else. But what's kind of either a bummer or exciting, really, depending on how you look at it, with Falcon and Winter Soldier coming out next week, that looks like typical MCU material. And that's not a bad thing. That, to me, I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot. I haven't been. It looks like a lot of action, and I haven't really seen action in a while, like any action movies. So it'll be good for me, but I can definitely see that other people who are superheroed out, and the pandemic wasn't enough time to distance what superheroes were before compared to what they were, how much time has passed since then. We'll just see. What do you guys think? Do you think Falcon and Winter Soldier is also going to be more the same, or do you think it might have some kind of plot twist like WandaVision?
There is the chance for a twist because Winter Soldier is based around a twist. In my opinion, their powers alone are not unique enough in the way that Wanda's is for it to be as much of a twist and as much of a unique take as WandaVision can be. Yeah. Because they're action heroes, and they play with guns and stuff, and they don't play with time and projections and stuff like that. So it's, in my opinion, they're going to try to keep it as fresh as it can be, but that's still going to be very reminiscent of the Avengers films, which is fine because people want some familiarity with it. But it's going to be, in my opinion, that's low on the list for me. I'm not going to make that a priority in my watching.
Jeff, what about you? What do you think about Falcon and Winter Soldier coming up?
Well, I don't think it's going to be in the same vein as WandaVision. You know, as Connor had touched on earlier, you know, it's not, you know, especially just with the nature of the characters that are in the two shows. You know, while one's dealing with Infinity Stones and Chaos Magic, Falcon and Winter Soldier, they deal with super soldiers and guns, and I'm assuming some terrorists. You know, so that's a little bit more familiar, a little bit more grounded in reality, while still having a degree of suspended belief.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a huge Captain America fan, I am really curious to see how things are going to proceed from here, because, you know, he is one of the big three for the MCU. So now that he's retired, well, where do you go from there? You know, how's this? You know, I know that he gave the shield to Sam at the end of Endgame. Spoilers. But how is Sam going to kind of fill those shoes or grab the shield, so to speak? You know, how's he going to take it up? You know.
Yeah, and yeah, that is something I'm really looking forward to seeing.
You know, and does Winter Soldier, who's ran kind of parallel to what Steve did, you know, how does Bucky fit into that? Is he, you know, is it going to be more of like a Tango and Cash kind of feel, or is it going to be, you know, a little bit more of a mentoree type thing?
Well, we at the time of recording, we are less than a week away from the premiere of that show. So, you know, by the time this posts, it's only going to be a few days before it premieres. So we are looking forward to it. I know I certainly am looking forward to it, but we will see. And we'll definitely be talking about it on our next episode as well as a review once Luke gets back from his sickness of not knowing that the Oxford comma is the best. So, moving on to the main topic. This week, it's all about our friend Jeff. Who is he? What are you all about? What do you do? What's your spirit animal? What's your favorite color? What do you order at the bar? All of these questions will not be answered, but we have other questions for you instead. So, before we came on, we did ask Jeff some of his favorite nerdy content, and he provided us like anything that he knows a lot about, and so we can dig deep and see, what are your opinions on certain things revolving these series. So some of those segments are Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, DC and Marvel, and The Walking Dead. And before we go into those series, we want to know a little bit more about you. So, Jeff, tell us, what are some of, those things that you like? What else do you like? Whether it's nerdy, not nerdy, just tell us about yourself.
Oh, I like candlelit dinners and
long walks on the beach.
On the beach. And also to the fridge. And up and down and around the square of Maryville, to look for watering holes.
So, what was awkward, pimple-faced teen Jeff like? What was he reading? What comics was he reading? What video games did he play?
The awkward, pimple-faced Jeff Conley, he, surprisingly enough, hadn't really got into reading the comics at that point. I did read The Hobbit. It's been entirely too long since I have, so I need to reread it. That I'd also read some S.E. Hinton, which I really liked. I love The Outsiders. That's actually like one of my favorite books and one of my favorite movies because it's the most 80s cast ever. So I would highly recommend seeing that. And reading. Well, some sports autobiographies and sports history. Then, as in terms of playing video games, I was still rocking my N64 at that time, keeping it very old school. And my PlayStation 2 as well. So, for N64, your standard Mario games and Donkey Kong and NFL Blitz, the Gretzky game. Let's see, what else? And then for PS2, it was like the Madden games, NHL games. I really liked, let's see, for N64, I believe it was N64. Star Fox was one of my favorite games for that. One of the few games I've actually beat. Another game that I actually beat was, for PS2 was Sly Cooper, or Sly Cooper 2.
I never got into that series, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
It was actually pretty cool. I liked it. I tried playing the Hobbit video game that came out for PS2 way back when, but I couldn't.
But like,
why? It was kind of hard for me, so I couldn't.
Why?
Because it was there.
So, Jeff, what is something that makes you the most nostalgic about nerd culture? What's something you think of and it just throws you all the way back?
Well, I think, kind of at that time, like kind of what the heroes are, like what they stand for, or what I thought they stood for at the time, and also, as time progressed and as the series I watched progress, especially given, I don't know, I guess given the past year or so, kind of a callback to simpler times, and also kind of life lessons that they sometimes throw in there in terms of meeting adversity or going through struggle and strife and trying to persevere and prevail and come out better on the other side for it.
Yeah, and so then tell me, what are some games and TV shows on your bucket list that you've not yet been able to cross off but you're still looking forward to?
Those shows would be, honestly, the two right now that really stand out would be, especially since we just got done with WandaVision, would be Falcon and Winter Soldier. Okay. Another one would be Loki, because, well, he's one of the most popular and fan favorite villains, and I gotta say, I like him. He lives up to the billing of a god of mischief. Falcon and Winter Soldier. I haven't seen Teen Titans yet. Or
the live action?
Yeah, the live action. I haven't got to see that yet, but
I couldn't do it.
One for you, huh?
Not my thing.
Well, it is definitely a slow burn. It is something I've seen both seasons so far, and it's still making more. There's going to be a third season coming soon, and I think it's definitely something that you can't go into it expecting the original cartoon.
Oh, of course. Let's see. The latest season of Young Justice. I haven't got to see that yet. So, I believe it's Young Justice: The Outsiders.
I don't even know if I saw it. I might have.
But that looks quite good. I'm a fan of Young Justice.
Young Justice is so good.
And then the Lord of the Rings series that's going to be on, I believe it's Amazon, I think, is making it. I am hugely looking forward to that, and I'm also hugely looking forward to Fire and Blood, the Game of Thrones Targaryen prequels. So those are the big ones that I'm looking forward to.
I've been looking for Game of Thrones was just so good, and except for the last season, which I have to agree with everyone, it was not good. But with that could be nearly an entire. Oh yeah,
that could be nearly an entire podcast in itself. How we feel, the collective we. Yep. Your feelings on it and mine. We could probably go for, I would say, a good hour or so at least on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot there.
We'll put a pin in that one.
Well, let's actually move on. I want to talk to you about Star Wars. There's a lot of content out there for Star Wars. There's 9 core movies. There's a few spin-off movies. There's, The Mandalorian is huge right now, even for non-Star Wars fans. And there's a bunch of other shows like Clone Wars. And I want to say there's other stuff that I just don't know about. There's a bunch of books out there. Our friend, the three of us, we have a friend, Brandon Cass, and he is like the Star Wars guru. And he's actually the one that got me into Star Wars. But I know you're a huge fan, Jeff. So tell me, what are some of the good movies, or just good things in general about the media, the fan base? What are some of the bad things about some of, bad movies, bad TV shows, bad anything, any bad content? What are the goods and the bads? And this is hot takes. Hot takes.
Oh yeah, and before we get too far into the Star Wars, that would also be another one of the shows that I'm kind of aching to see is the Bad Batch that's coming out May the 4th, actually. So I am super excited about that. I know what I'm doing for that day. Yeah. So, good Star Wars. We'll start off with series. The Clone Wars. That's for me. That's my that's the OG, at least in terms of series. I love it because it gives more substance to the prequel trilogy. I feel like, since it takes place between, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it takes place, I believe, the second and third prequel. So episodes.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I thought what made it really interesting was watching. Was a couple of things. The first being Anakin's slow, descent, and the little mechanisms being put in place. The tumblers being set for him to make his fall to the dark side. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was, the next thing I thought was interesting was they gave more of an in-depth look at Obi-Wan. The troll master of the universe, of the known galaxy, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like how it gave a little bit more on his backstory. And one of the things I thought was really refreshing about that series was that they gave the clone troopers personality. They showed us that they weren't just meat shields, or they weren't the drones that they were fighting. They actually had, they may all look alike, they may all look identical, but they had wildly varying personalities. So I thought that was really cool that they fleshed those characters out more,
And what about the bads then? What are some of the things you either pretend didn't exist, or just something you just can't stand?
All right, so I suppose here's where it starts to heat up a little bit. For series, I would say probably those holiday specials. those are kind of hard to watch. But then for series, well, they've actually made some damn good series. Love the Mandalorian. That was, I think that is more than obvious to say that it's a huge fan favorite, and it's a favorite of mine. Then, in terms of kind of moving into movies, this is where things will heat up a little bit. I actually thought that the prequel trilogies, while I feel like it was kind of necessary to get that backstory, I actually thought those weren't half bad. The dialogue could have been better, and there was a lot of hate for Hayden Christensen's take on.
There's a lot of hate
Skywalker.
for sand.
Oh,
I knew you were going to mention it.
Yeah,
that sand.
Which I thought that in the last, with the ending of the most recent trilogy, I thought that was hilarious. What they did, especially in terms of Anakin Skywalker's hate for sand. But I feel like that wasn't Hayden Christensen's fault.
No.
I feel like he worked within the confines of what he could, but the dialogue at times was kind of just choppy, kind of brutal. But beyond that, I loved fight sequences and getting more of the backstory. Then I would say the things that I really didn't like, The Last Jedi.
Okay.
It's a divisive one.
Yeah.
It was visually stunning, but the storyline was just kind of left me saying at the end, just like, well, what the hell did what was that? What did I just watch?
So do you think is the last Jedi probably your least favorite of the 9?
I would say right before Last Jedi, Han Solo.
What?
Yeah, Han Solo. I
loved that movie.
Han Solo wasn't bad, but I mean, it was kind of forgettable in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I mean by it. But yeah, like it wasn't as bad as The Last Jedi, but it wasn't. It's still. That's probably the second to last for me.
See, I'm not a Star Wars fan, and so I don't have all the lore that I know. I don't have this is one series that for me, anything that's new is usually good because for the new series I enjoyed it because I didn't have anything to compare it to, and because all the stuff that people thought was like just copying the old versions, the first trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and then I didn't know that a lot of it was already done and just kind of a new way to make it more modern. So for me, I was like, this is pretty good. Like, I knew the second one. There was a lot of things that happened that didn't need to happen. Number 8. Or
Leia Mary Poppinsing herself into a ship after being jettisoned into space. I was just like, what?
Yeah, that was a little odd.
That, and then like there was that big chunk of time that they spent on that gambling planet. Like, it's
so painful. Yeah,
that was hard to watch. Like, I wanted to see something like a Hutt-occupied planet. Hutt-occupied, outer ring, gritty, tough, maybe even Cantina from the first, from the fourth movie. Han shot first.
I'm surprised that maybe I'm not surprised that The Last Jedi is your least favorite as opposed to Star the Clone Wars or Star Attack of the Clones Wars.
Well, Jar Jar could have derailed that for us, but he saved it. He saved it for us. No, I'm kidding.
What?
He was the best thing that ever happened to Star Wars.
Single-handedly, no.
Yep.
No, with the, I think that the prequel trilogy and the Clone Wars, those things put together, I felt like it gave a really nice, complete picture of everything that led up to the original trilogy. So, one of the movies I absolutely love, Rogue One.
That was very good.
Rogue One was excellent. To me it had kind of like World War II movie vibes, a little bit, and I really dug that.
Yeah. Yeah, see, for me, I mean, Rogue One and Solo are two of my favorite Star Wars movies because they're standalone, and for me, I like that the beginning, middle, and end it can all wrap itself up really well. And as opposed to like, there's a lot less lore I need to know in advance for even with the new trilogy. There's a lot of stuff with Han, Luke, and Leia that I'm supposed to know about going into it.
You have decades and decades of these characters being alive and having and traveling and having adventures throughout the galaxy. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's missing from even the original trilogy to the newest one. That's big gap. That's there's a long time between those. So I thought Rogue One did a nice job of segueing into the new trilogy, like where it fit, especially that the very ending I thought was amazing to it. To that movie with the hallway scene, and then
with Leia.
And Leia being there. We miss you, Carrie Fisher. So that's why that's one of my favorites. Those reasons are why it's one of my favorite Star Wars movies.
Okay, so Jeff, one final question for Star Wars: are you a Luke or a Han Solo?
I probably relate a little bit more to Han on most levels, but given that I've got metal in my body. Kind of like
your cyborg,
kind of like Luke does. Yeah, so I'm waiting to get my robot hand, just like him and his father before him. You know.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
it's a family.
So you're Han with Luke's arm.
A little bit of both.
It's like a family tattoo, but
Yes.
it's a family bionic arm.
All right, so let's move on to. Well, I think this is actually the perfect time for Connor and I to just take a 3-hour nap, because we're going to be talking about Lord of the Rings, which, which anybody who's been listening knows that Connor and I are not the biggest fans of this.
I have not seen a complete Lord of the Rings film since middle school, and it was the very first one.
Yeah.
Since then, I've not finished
fight?
a single one from. No, because I know you would kick my ass up and down the street. I would last.
We just talked about him having a metal arm, so.
Yeah. If I could land a shot, I would last all of 3 seconds. Also, I'm not going to fight because the battle's over. I won.
No.
I had an ex who loved the Lord of the Rings films, and it was, I will admit, it was a chore for me to just sit down and watch them. If I remember correctly, I think I only ever watched the first one with her. I was somehow able to get away with not seeing the second and third, but I hadn't seen them either since they were in theaters. But Jeff, it's not about us and our hatred for this series. Tell us why you somehow love it, and while you explain it, Connor and I can grab a nice comfy pillow and some warm milk and fall asleep.
Well, kind of what it tied back to with why I like superhero shows. That question that you asked me earlier was, especially given the past year, going through dark, kind of scary, kind of terrifying times, and kind of being able to admit that, but being able to keep going, keep moving, that and having good people in your life that make you want to keep going and keep fighting that fight.
Yeah. I definitely think that the fantasy aspect and the team dynamic and the relationships between the characters is something that we don't get very much in modern movies, in modern film.
Well, and that's not even just in modern movies, but that's just kind of life in general,
Well, yeah.
So to see something that see something like that I feel the world needs more of, you can kind of put a pause on what's going on in the outside world and suspend belief for 3 hours at a time, even though you guys are sleeping during those 3 hours.
It's only 3 hours long. It always felt like 4 times as long as that.
While you guys were napping, I was suspending belief of the outside world and kind of delving into this fantasy land where, as goofy as it may sound, like friendship, magic, helping people out, that perseverance, and maybe that quote that, not all who wander are lost, that's kind of cool for me. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I will say, I mean, it's undeniable that the world is it's created so well. I mean, it's got great characters, it's got great scenery, it's got great relationships, it's got just a great plot. I might have to go back sometime and try to give it another shot. I maybe with a pair of fresh eyes, maybe I'll be able to appreciate it.
Please suggest it. Yeah, I would highly suggest it. It's and as you grow up, you appreciate the level of intricacy and the creative mind, and the creative mastery that Tolkien had for his work. I mean, he created an entire world, came up with this, this entire world, languages for, multiple races of people living together or fighting against each other. It's really, it's kind of hard to put into words, how powerfully his creative genius kind of was.
There are only few people that can create worlds like he can. And George Lucas is one of them. I would say C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, is another. And
George R. R. Martin.
George R. R. Martin and J.K. Rowling.
Yeah,
only they can create the worlds that they did.
Yeah, those minds and that ability to interweave such complex and intricate stories together and make these compelling characters, and that just, it just pulls you into the story, and kind of leaves you sitting on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's such a rare ability.
Yes, yeah. The way the characters work together in their world, and the way the world and the characters interact with each other is just it flows so seamlessly like ours, and yet it's still compelling and believable, although it's fantasy.
Yeah, like I said, you suspend belief a little bit while you watch, and when you figure out how to do that, like, it just becomes that much better,
Yeah.
So obviously the films were based off of the books, but and I can't speak for certain. I think you mentioned that there's going to be a series in the works.
Yes, there's going to be a Lord of the Rings series in the works, and the budget for it is insane. like $1 billion.
Do you think series like this, and if other series also pop up, because this is going to inevitably do well, do you consider this to be something that you're excited about and can build on the world, or do you think it's something that kind of takes away from the magic a little bit?
Since I would say, man, that's honestly a really good question, Johnny. That's
Thanks.
Tough to answer because I am a little bit nervous about it because I don't know. Like they've kept the details of the show pretty hush hush, close to the vest. But if they can get Peter Jackson to work on it, I would be incredibly excited because he created an amazing trilogy. The man can make a movie.
For sure.
So I'd like to see what he can do with a TV series as well. So I don't know what time period it's supposed to be set in, or like what age it's supposed to be set in, or where exactly it's going to take place. I know it's supposed to be in Middle Earth, but or at least from what I know, there's other lands that they could possibly set it in. But again, they've kept the details of it pretty hush-hush. They haven't divulged cast. They haven't divulged the age that it's going to happen in, if it's going to be a prequel or a sequel series. But if they can get some of the cast members from even like from both the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogies in them, even for like cameos or guest appearances, I think it could end up being really good. The only thing is that I'd like it to be like whoever's writing the show, I just hope that they have a really good, thorough understanding of Tolkien's works and kind of how he wanted the world to really be understood. So
yeah,
again,
there's a lot there that you have to
there's a lot to unpack.
Live up to.
It really is.
Yeah, for sure.
Huge hype.
So,
you get 17 Oscars off 3 movies. Like that's a pretty big deal.
That's
not too shabby.
Let's move on. We did talk a little bit earlier about DC and Marvel, but just briefly, I want to dive in it a little bit with just a few questions. Obviously, there's a lot of DC versus Marvel. DC's better at this, Marvel's better at that. But when it comes to comics, when it comes to movies, and when it comes to television, who do you think, in your opinion, wins each of those categories? Comics, movies, and television.
All right. So, comics. I've read more DC comics, and the ones I have read have been really, really good. I've read Batman comics more than any other DC character, and every one of them I've read has been pretty amazing overall. Especially, which I've heard that these are kind of controversial among some comic fans, but the Kevin Smith Batman comics, the Widening Gyre and Cacophony, I believe is how that's. I'm not sure if that's the proper enunciation of it, but those are really good. The Long Halloween is another one of my favorite Batman comics.
Sorry, I was on mute. It's Cacophony.
Cacophony. Okay.
Cacophony. Yeah.
Okay. Lanolin, like sheep's wool. But the Long Halloween, which I think the new Matt Reeves Batman trilogy is going to be based off, or going to have some basis off of.
Does that have the Riddler?
Yes, it does.
I
it hasn't been
so,
part of it. It has a lot of, if I remember right, because it's been a few years since I read it. But it's got a lot of. Actually, wait, does it have the Riddler? Jeez, this has been so long. It's been entirely too long since I've got to read that, because I had to borrow that from one of our brothers. Shout out to James Heaton, I believe that was who I borrowed that from. But it's quite good. The ending throws you a bit. And then I would say I've read some of the Jeff Johns works for some of the other characters, and they've been pretty good, And then TV shows. Obviously, I love the Arrowverse. I think DC takes the comics and it takes the TV series, whether that be live action or animated. Batman Beyond was one of my favorites growing up. Like I would get off the bus and run up to the house. That way, I made sure I was ready for like Batman Beyond, the Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited.
That shit was my jam.
Yeah, and even up to Young Justice, their animated series, their animated movies. DC kills those. They're fantastic.
I think the DC animated shows and movies are the finest superhero movies out there, including live action.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to disagree with that. And then for live action movies, though, thus far, at least in terms of making a universe, it's got to be the MCU. Just with how well they've connected everything and the level of detail that they've put into each movie to make sure that everything is congruent is, in my opinion, incredible. It's wildly impressive, I think. Now it's just how do you move forward from Endgame, which was over a decade's worth of work culminating. So
I honestly, from what you said, I have to agree. I wasn't much of a comics reader myself. From what I have read, I have to agree about DC is just a little bit better. Movies, I think it's kind of obvious that Marvel just knocks that out of the park. And then television, it's definitely the Arrowverse that pushes that over for me as well. So yeah. Like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Daredevil, and I guess Iron Fist, if you really want to, include that one. But they are phenomenal shows, and the fact that they got to cross over in a season of Defenders was really cool. But they did it one time. And Arrowverse does it every single year for like 5 or 6 years in a row. They've been doing that every single year, and so yeah, it's an iconic thing that I don't think it's ever there's ever been something with TV that's been this big and this consistent ever. And that's had this many crossovers ever in the history of television. The closest that we would ever get that I can think of would be Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and its crossovers with Angel. But even that
late 90s, early 2000s TV.
Yeah,
okay.
but even that was just 2 shows. This is 6 or 7 shows. You know, you've got Flash, you've got Arrow, Legends, Batwoman, Black Lightning, now Superman and Lois, and I feel like I'm missing something. Yeah, I'm sure I'm missing something, but that was I named 6 off. Supergirl. Did I forget Supergirl? Yes, 7.
Yeah.
That's the So
well, I know for a lot of these questions, since today is my Friday, and given the current line of work I'm in, the mental tax is just that is there a little bit. So if I'm a little bit kind of wonky with my answers, or I look like I'm kind of like I'm screen frozen, it's my brain trying to buffer a little bit.
understandable.
A lot of bandwidth has been taken up, by the end of the week. So, I'm not, jumping right out of the gate at some of the stuff. So forgive me for that.
No, that's all right. That's perfectly fine.
But I will say this live action series, the Arrowverse was really a good rival for the MCU. At least I was kind of hoping that the DCEU would take almost like a reverse approach to what Marvel did. They started off with the movies, and then they started spinning out into shows. Well, I was hoping that maybe somehow, like, the Arrowverse would, like, they'd start with shows that would end up spinning out into movies.
Yeah.
Almost like an inverse, MCU building.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were, like I said, they were just powerful for so many years. Connor, did you say did it look like you were going to say something?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, but I was just going to say, agreeing with Jeff, like, that is the one area, like, the television shows are the one area where DC and Marvel can stand toe-to-toe.
Yeah. I think there's
Maybe
definitely...
the comics as well.
Yeah, the Marvel is doing mature content a lot better, I think. And I will admit that the Arrowverse is a little bit more serialized, and it's kind of like, I mean, it is CW, so it's got a lot of that girlfriend drama, but it's
don't get me started on that.
But and I will say that occasionally, like, I mean, you guys know me, you guys know what I watch. I eat that up. I eat that all up. And the fact that there's all these people and superheroes, like as superheroes, like it's a win-win for me. So
you know what, Jonald?
Yeah, what's that, Jeffold?
I cannot stand the acting of the CW. It's so bad.
It's not the acting. I think the actors are fine, but
terrible.
The writing at times becomes, I think would be appropriate would be relationship centric or relationship heavy.
Yeah.
At least like the romantic relationship, not like I feel like at times it can get to be a little, it can kind of suffocate and overcrowd other important aspects of shows.
Oliver Queen has to save the world, but he's also late for his anniversary dinner.
Oh, God.
And that is not an excuse.
Men
are always
Felicity
trying to come
is
up
like,
with some sort of excuse.
No, I don't think so.
Season 4 of Arrow was, for me, like that focal point, what you just said, where it wasn't Arrow, it was Felicity and Friends, and I was just, oh my God. I was like, you have the most comic accurate costume for the show this season, but then just like you veer so far off the mark after you get done with the visuals and with this like really kind of droll head, bang your head against the wall relationship stuff, to where it was almost like a soap opera with costumes.
Absolutely.
So it's just like even Stephen Amell with season 4, he's like, I remember seeing a panel where a fan asked him like, what would you rank your favorite seasons? And then he ranked them, but then he's like, they're like, well, what about season 4? He's like, we don't talk about season 4. So even he, the Green Arrow, was like, no, that's not there.
That's funny.
Can we at least agree that Captain Cold, whoever that actor is, is garbage and should have been fired a long time ago.
What?
Wentworth Miller?
Wentworth Miller? No.
He's
one of the worst
excellent,
actors I've
actually.
ever seen, and he's so. What's the show?
Prison Break?
No.
Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow. Yeah,
Oh.
that acting was offensively bad. And he's
Actually,
what do you want for dinner? I want a sandwich. I want a. You know
Wow,
what?
you're actually
some
playing him really well
milk.
right now. Yeah.
Give me some milk with that. And I'm like, oh my god, you don't.
He was such a villain. He had to ooze villainy at every line.
Yeah, but he.
he actually had a pretty decent character arc, though. He really
Yeah.
did. Like,
He had a good redemption.
he did. So I actually enjoyed that. Now, what was it? Citizen Cold was a little bit more cringy.
Oh, I don't
liked
even remember
Captain
him.
Cold, but
Was that his dad?
No, Citizen Cold was from Earth X.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, it's like that's still Leonard Snart, but that's not. it's not him. You know.
What was that line that he said? It was like, make a plan, execute the plan goes off the rails, throw away the plan. Isn't that what it is?
It's something like that.
Yeah. That's an iconic line from him. But okay, let's move on to the last one of your last favorites, and that's The Walking Dead. So The Walking Dead has been on the core show. It was originally a comic series. It ran for many years, and I believe it was last year that was the final, either last year or 2019 was the final issue that came out. I can't remember exactly. But it ran for quite a while. And now the original series is on its 10th season, and it's going to end with its 11th. It's got Fear the Walking Dead, which is about 6 seasons in so far, and another series called The Walking Dead World Beyond, which is going to be a temporary, short-term series with 2 confirmed seasons. So there's a lot of content here. And there's more on the way with a new Daryl and Carol sequel series that, Jeff, you said that you didn't even know was going to happen until I brought it up to you before we started. So now hearing about it, now hearing about this Daryl and Carol series, what are your thoughts? I mean, there's very little info, so you at this point know just as much as I do.
I think it has potential, just with, so long as they keep obviously the characters or the actors who play Daryl and Carol, because those two have an incredible chemistry on screen together. They work super well together. They complement each other nicely. So long as they keep the dialogue tight and a relatively coherent storyline, I think it's going to be a show worth watching. I think it's going to be good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've never seen a character in a show that so successfully and realistically went from me hating her, Carol specifically, to me finding her to be one of the most badass characters on television in general. Yeah.
And it wasn't even. It was so. Oh, it was just so good the way that they made somebody that just seemed completely helpless in season 1 to now she is like the iconic female lead of the show. Michonne's got a machete. Maggie is just a certified badass in general. And I loved Andrea. I know a lot of people hated her, but I loved Andrea. But you've got all these characters that are stacked and that are powerful. And then you look at Carol and you would assume that, she's nothing. She's not going to be able to fend for herself. And she's one of the toughest characters in that world. So, I mean, okay, this is a question I just thought of, but in a fight, Jeff, who would win, Daryl or Carol? Fight to the death. They're on opposing sides. They're both equally. They're both as strong as they are, with as much knowledge as where they are in the show. Who would win? Who's got the better skill set?
Oh, no, skill set. No,
well, I guess if that changes the question.
It kind of changes the scope. The lens that you want to look at it through, because naturally you'd say, Daryl is, a bigger,
He's a
stronger
hunter.
guy than Carol. He is a hunter, so his which is obviously that's part of his skill set and his background. Like he has been fighting and grew up pretty rough and tumble from the get go. You look at growing up with Merle and surviving Merle all those years. So I would say, I would say with sheer experience, even
you could say the same for Carol. All the things that she experienced with her husband.
Yeah,
but I guess it wasn't since childhood though for her. So
yeah, while she has, she's chewed a fair amount of dirt for sure, but just by sheer volume and years of experience that Daryl has on Carol for that, I would have to give the edge to Daryl. But she would put up a hell of a fight, though.
I think if it ever came to, like sneaking around in the woods, I think it would be Daryl as well. But I think if it ever came down to some kind of like spy mission, like in the city spy mission, Carol is flawless. I mean, she would bake cookies and then stab you while you're eating them. Like,
yeah, I could actually see her doing that. It's kind of horrifying because now, whenever I see a tray of cookies for the next day or two, like if I come across one, I'm gonna be like, "Is there a Carol getting ready to, knife me as soon as I reach for one?" Or I take one or two bites and then pow,
I think it's really funny to see how they've both grown in the show. I mean, you look at Daryl, and he's I wouldn't call him a villain, but he's definitely an anti-hero in the first few seasons. And then Carol, like I said, she went from somebody that was completely helpless and always needed to. She was that NPC character that always, you had to take on escort missions.
she went from kind of a damsel in distress of sorts to becoming an actual bona fide force on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's one moment
that's a pretty amazing transformation. In and of itself.
There's a moment when they're first entering into Alexandria, and it's been a few years since I saw this, but it's when they first meet the Alexandrians ever. And they're the people at the gate. They're like, "Okay, bring us your weapons." And so, Rick and Daryl, and they all step forward and they give the weapons. And then Carol, who at this point is a certified badass, she goes over like she's a sweet mom, and she just like daintily puts the guns on the rack or whatever. And it's supposed to like make them think, "Oh, she's like she doesn't know what she's doing with these guns. She's not prepared to." It's all an act, though. She's like, that's how she survives. By pretending to be, nothing more than like just somebody that's lucked her way through the apocalypse and has been that group mom for so long.
Deception.
Meanwhile, in reality, she's like the cutthroat killer of the group, and it's so interesting to see a character like that.
Yeah, I would say that your assessment is pretty accurate. That's my stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Daryl is the one that you see coming, but you just can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And Carol's the one you just can't stop because you don't see her coming.
Yep, exactly.
That's about the best way I could really sum that up.
Daryl's the one you're afraid of, and Carol's the one you need to be afraid of.
Mm.
But all right, so one last question for Walking Dead. There's a while ago, like 2 years ago, there was revealed to be a trilogy of Walking Dead movies starring Rick Grimes. There's almost no information about it since that was announced 2 years ago, and it's apparently still in the work. I think recently that was confirmed. It's not slowing down. But there's no information about it otherwise. Are you excited? Do you think he's been out away? Because he's been off the show for 2 years now. Do you think that's too long for him to be relevant, or are you looking forward to it?
I would say I'm looking forward to it for the fact I love Rick.
Mm-hmm.
I just like his character. I think Andrew Buchanan, I believe that's the man who plays Rick
Andrew
Grimes.
Lincoln.
Andrew Lincoln. Buchanan. Yep. No, why did I say Buchanan? See, end of the week. But he's really well portrayed. I like the actor, and some of the things that man has had to endure over the course of the show. I'd be kind of curious to see as to when, like what time frame these movies are supposed to be set in.
Yeah.
So that would be a big selling point for me, is if it's at the right point in time that they want to set these. Or otherwise, I'm just kind of confused about it, since I haven't really heard much. Is it supposed to be, adventures of him largely on his own? Is he separated from the rest of his group, or is it with Daryl and Carol and Carl and little Judy, the last kicker? So that's all. Those are the factors that I would look at to say whether I am or am not excited for it. But I think just for merit of character alone, I would say that I am excited for it.
So I'm looking at the information for it now, and it was confirmed in December, just a few months ago, that this spring, so possibly as soon as next month, they will begin filming for the films. And the characters of Jadis is going to be in the series as well. And the character of Heath, who was written out and then kind of never came back, he just kind of disappeared, has a possibility of coming in. So that's talk for he's coming back. It's supposed to be 3 films, and apparently they'll be shooting in as soon as next month. So we will see what happens. But yeah, so with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, DC and Marvel, and Walking Dead, is there anything else you wanna add? Let some of the listeners know about you, either about any of those series or just anything else, really.
Nothing really comes to mind right now. I'm sure that within 30 seconds of this ending, I'll be like, oh man, I should have added this on too. I forgot
plenty
all
of
about
opportunity
this.
in the future for you too. This isn't just the one time you'll be here.
Oh no, yeah, we'll definitely be having you back eventually.
Nice. I would say about this time next year will probably happen. Hopefully,
in another 54 episodes, we'll have you back.
Yeah. That's the rule now. No, nothing really comes to mind. Those are the shows that I, some of the many shows that I like to, follow and nerd out on, and pretty unapologetic about those. So, that's really about it.
All right.
Also, I suppose one thing that I could. Looking forward to Comic-Cons being a thing again.
Very much so, yes.
Absolutely, yes. That is.
Johnny and I have donned our costumes at Comic-Con, and it was amazing.
That was so much fun. That was really my god, so much fun.
Comic-Con was my first and only Comic-Con experience, and it was a blast. It
really, that's your only one.
Yeah, that was my first and only one so far. Yeah, which I don't plan on it being my last. I really
okay,
don't,
good. Yeah,
it was so much fun. It really was.
Good. Yeah. No. I that's something you've met our friend Corey before. I text her every once in a while. I'm thinking about like some of the Comic Cons we used to go to for our old show. So much fun. I mean, you don't get that kind of enjoyment from really much else, being around. I think the closest thing that people could relate to is music festivals. For anybody that's a big fan of going to music festivals, that's just something that's just like you're surrounded by people who are there for the same reason as you, and it's a whole weekend of just whether it's nerding about nerd stuff or nerding about music or nerding about whatever, it's still a group of people who are all nerding out together. So that's just coming together. That's something that's just going to be very much appreciated once we're able to do that again.
In honor of John Schnepp, it truly is a sweaty experience.
I think something that would be kind of cool. That was a mix of, since you mentioned like the music festival thing, or maybe even like a concert. I think it would be really awesome if the band who played, or the group who played Night Begins to Shine on Teen Titans Go, threw a concert and everybody dressed up like DC characters. I think that'd be pretty rad.
Yes, that would be super rad.
Yeah, I think
it's got to be Japanese punk rock.
Yeah, and of course the Night Begins to Shine is like the headline. Whoever made that piece of wonderful music headlines everything. Yeah.
Well, with that, let's move on to recommendations. So last week we had Court on as one of our guests. Well, as our guest, not one of. He was the guest. And he recommended a YouTube video about the Power Stone game called Power Stone History. Is This Even a Fighting Game? So what do you guys think? Jeff, you were able to give it a watch, right?
Correct, I was. I honestly didn't know about this game before seeing the video, but after seeing the video and the assessment that the publisher of that video did, or the creator of that video did, I think it's something that I would actually really enjoy playing, because I see elements that game brought forward. It was kind of ahead of its time, really, at least in my opinion, for the fact that what they pointed out in the video of like the interactive backgrounds and like the 2D fighting style on a 3D plane. I thought that's was probably what I would imagine would be pretty groundbreaking at the time, and you see elements of that in fighting games to this day. Like you see that in you see some of that in probably some of my favorite video games now, the Injustice series.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
You see the interactive the interactive backgrounds are where you can grab a missile and chuck it at somebody and it blows up and it does damage to them. And just like the simple punch kick special combinations that you can have, as well as your close range and your long range attacks. I thought that, if that's the game that really brought all that to the forefront, I think that that's most certainly a fighting game, and that it would be one that I would really enjoy playing, seeing as how a lot of video games, even to this day, have taken chapters out of its playbook. It's still implemented those things. I think that would be a game that I would actually really enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember the video saying that it got a lot of bad reviews, but I mean, it's considered a classic. I never heard of this game before Court recommended this video, but given what the video essay showed me, it's something I would absolutely pick up and play. I need to play a little bit more Capcom games anyways, and it looks like a good one. Unfortunately, that's all I can really say on that. I thought the video essay was really well done. I love video essays, and Luke and Court have recommended really good ones to me over the years. That thing alone made me nostalgic for something I never even heard of.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I would have to agree with your assessment on that.
I think it's interesting because I had a game on the N64 about Xena the Warrior Princess. And there was a fighting game that used the same style, the same 3D plane, but still 2D fighting, where you could like move around in the same way. I was interested in seeing what the dates of this and this Power Stone game and the Xena game were, because they had the same style, but they said that this was the first, or at least the first iconic one. It was, if I remember right, 9 months between 9 months after Power Stone is when Xena came out. So they had like the same concept, really, just different. One was more kid friendly, one was slightly more mature. And yeah, Power Stone just barely beat out Xena by about 9 months of release. So hey, I mean, great. Like I didn't know that this was even a really common fighting genre, but I think this might have at least influenced it a little bit. So who knows? You know, I'd also never heard of this game at all, but it's really interesting to see, to think about what else was inspired by Power Stone. You know.
Question.
So yes.
Does the Xena game have Lucy Lawless? I need to know this.
I'm pretty sure she voiced Xena in the game. I assume she voiced her, but I know it's this. I'm assuming it's the same like 1999 version of like the model. Like it's got N64 graphics, so it's not good. But But I can almost guarantee that Lucy Lawless did at least voice her in the video game. But the game was it was fun for what it was, but it was definitely not something I would ever consider one of my favorites of all time. So what would you guys rate it then, Connor? What would you rate the Power Stone video?
So I would have to rate this, you know, a solid 7.5 out of 10 to feel the power is to play the games.
All right. I would give this 7 out of 10 Edward Falcons.
Oh.
That was the main character.
It was.
And what about you, Jeff? What would you rate this?
I think I would go with I'd say probably 8 out of 10, maybe even 8.5, just for the fact that it seemed like it was it was kind of ahead of its time a little bit. It brought some innovation to fighting games and the fighting genre of games. So for that, it gets pretty high rating for that.
And I'm looking at a character list, and so there's a character on here named Wang Tang, and that sounds like a lot of fun to say. So your official rating, you said 8 out of 10?
Yes.
Yeah, 8 out of 10. I'm gonna help you out there. 8 out of 10 Wang Tangs.
That's right.
He
Jeff,
is an aspiring.
Is Tang now.
Oh, no,
he's an aspiring chef and martial artist from the town of Tong On. So, which Tong, like chef, like because he's a chef.
You gotta make sure the tongs.
Do you get it, Jeff?
Oh.
All right, so the next recommendation was from Luke, and it was Iconic Bitch by 3D Blast. And, I mean, that name already just gets 10 out of 10. But aside from the name, what did you guys think of it?
So I had a lot of fun with this. I had no idea what I was getting into, just like the Power Stone videos. But it wasn't soundtrack music, but it was music that pulled in influences of video games.
Yes.
And I thought it was great. I mean, it was really chill. I kind of not vaporwave. That's not the right word. I don't know what I would even call it, but it was just I don't know, kind of like electronica, and it was really chill. It was mostly just for ambience, I think, rather than like easy listening, rather than actual like something that you would sit down like rather than actual like radio music. And I thought it was really great. It was really, I went on a run listening to it, and it was fast enough that I was actually keeping a good pace and everything, and I had a blast with it. I don't know anything about 3D Blast, so I can't really give you specifics on that. Like I was doing a little bit of research. It was just a tad, so it was not much, and I wasn't really able to find who the producer of the album was, so I won't be able to give them any credit other than that it was mixed and mastered really, really well, and I want to listen to more.
All right. Jeff, I know you weren't able to finish it all the way, but tell us what you thought about from what you did here.
Well, I think I made it about 15, maybe 16 minutes in, roughly, and I thought it was good. It did feel like it was heavily influenced by video game soundtracks, especially like Sonic. That's what that really brought to mind. That was what really kind of came to the forefront of my mind when hearing it. That and maybe a few other 90s, early 2000s games. But overall, it had a smooth sound to it, and I think it actually might be good for, if you're trying to study or clean the house, or maybe even go for a run, since it's kind of steady, it's kind of upbeat, but there really isn't a lot of lyrics that you need to listen to and kind of hone in on. It's just something that kind of gives you a rhythm and a beat, and you can, it is there in the background, and you can just kind of focus on the task at hand. That would probably, I think that's my assessment of what I got to listen to. But who knows, maybe the other, I think it was 53 minutes overall, so who knows, maybe the other 35, 38 minutes that I didn't get to listen to, maybe they have it has an entirely different feel, but no, as of what I've listened to, that's my assessment.
Yeah, definitely. I gotta say, this isn't my favorite thing that he's recommended. I can tell like the kind of vibe that I can tell what the vibe it was going for just didn't sit well with me. It was something that was just not really my style. It's hard to say exactly what it was, because it kind of went from smooth, like easy listening, to something that was just a lot, like there was a lot of screaming at certain parts, and I was just like, whoa, okay.
I didn't hear that, so that might be...
I'm awake.
It's gonna keep you on your toes.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of back and forth, I guess. That was just wasn't for me. But Connor, what would you rate it?
I think the third song was referencing Eric Andre, or whatever his name is, and it said he didn't give a shit about baseball, so that didn't sit right with me. So I'm gonna have to give this a negative 14. No, I'm joking. This was. I could really vibe with this album. I can find love in most genres of music. So this is probably going to be an 8. Yeah, an 8 out of 10. Resistance is futile. Is it futile or futile?
Yes.
Okay.
Jeff, what about you? What would you rate it?
Since it's not really the genre of music that I listen to a whole lot of, and also based off the small sampling that I did listen to, it was, it wasn't terrible, but I'm not gonna go gaga over it either. I give that about a 6.
6? All right.
Yeah, I'd say 6, maybe 6.5.
Okay.
Not terrible, but I'm not going nuts over it either.
I will say that I was a big fan of the. I didn't like the song "Talk to Me," but I did love that they used the sound clip from Goofy Movie. I loved that.
See, I haven't got to hear that yet.
Yeah, it's track number 9. If you've seen the Goofy Movie, then when you hear the song, you'll hear it. But
is it from Powerline?
It is not. It's a scene of the first of the Powerline, the fake Powerline concert where Max is singing "Stand Out," and it's the guy in the audience who's yelling at Stacy, the president of the grade, and he goes, talk to me, baby," and so they use that voice clip over and over again, and. So yeah, that was something that was like, oh, that's Goofy Movie, big fan of that. But yeah, I'm not. It just, other than that, the reference that wasn't, and I mean a bunch of references. Like there was Sonic in there. Strangely, I heard Ariana Grande in there, which I was like, okay, like that's Sonic and Ariana Grande in the same album was not something I was expecting. And then there was a track called King K. I was really excited, looking forward to it. Because I was expecting it to be King K. Rool, like a reference to something in Donkey Kong, and it wasn't, at least not something I recognized. So, yeah, that was kind of a bummer. But, yeah, I would rate it, I'd probably rate this 5 out of 10 Powerline concerts.
Luke is not happy.
Yeah, sorry, Luke.
Well, you just toss things out there and hope people like it, but if they don't, you'll always like it, so it's like, yeah.
Moving on to some sponsors then. Connor, do you know something that I really hate?
Genocide, war, famine.
Yes, but what's right after that list? I really hate walking into a dark room and having no lights to see in.
I don't like that either.
It's those 4 things. Well, this podcast is sponsored by ByLightFixtures.com. Visit ByLightFixtures.com for a trusted source of quality lighting products for your business or home. So, Jeff, if you ever happen to walk into any war or genocide or famine or a dark room, then you know that you can count on ByLightFixtures.com for at least one of those things.
We need trusted quality lighting sources for all of those situations.
Exactly. Along with that, this podcast is also sponsored by Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast. So visit anchor.fm to start your own, which is something that we do. We're on Anchor. So if you're listening to us on YouTube, we're not getting the big bucks from that. So go to Anchor and listen to us there, because every listen is a part of a penny that we get.
Half of a penny.
So listen to us on Anchor. If you're big fans, Court and Court's mom, I know you guys are listening. So listen to us on Anchor and give us those partial pennies, because those partial pennies, they add up to real pennies.
I think we have like $18 or something like that from 54 episodes.
$18. Let's go blow that on a Taco Bell run.
An entire year's worth of work. We have $18.
hey, that's some good quality podcasting right there.
For now.
Exactly.
It adds up.
Yeah, it's going to snowball. Maybe next year we'll have $30. Who knows?
That'd be nice.
So I want to give a big thank you to Tom Taylor from Tailored Beats for the intro and outro of this podcast. Follow Tom Taylor on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Tailored Productions. That's Tailored with a TAYLORED Productions. Also, a big shout out to our pal of the podcast, Zach Perez, and his new show, Title Screen. The new podcast is going to feature Zach discussing with his guests some of the most influential video games of all time, and be on the lookout for a new episode with our co-host, Luke, on Crash Team Racing. Follow the show on Twitter at Title Screen Pod. So go check that out right now. And last of all, and most certainly not least, Jeff, why don't you tell us where both of our listeners can find you at? Is there anywhere you want to plug? Anywhere that you are you just existing? You just vibing?
I'm just existing.
He's so you can find Jeff probably at your local watering hole, depending on where you live. So if you're listening, go to your nearest bar, and you might see Jeff there. That's better than any Twitter handle. So.
I think that sums it up.
Great. Well, also, don't forget to not only listen to us on Anchor, but follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube if you're not already here. Follow us on everything, anywhere you can find us. Our links are in the description below, and I want to give one final thank you to our guest, Jeff. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
You're welcome, and thank you guys for having me on this. I've missed doing this with you guys. For those of you who have got to catch on to this really in the early days with Nerdmageddon, I love doing this. This is a lot of fun for me because I love these two. These guys are these are my guys, my fraternity brothers, and getting to talk about things that that we all really enjoy and that we're all really passionate about. It's it's a lot of laughs and it's a lot of good energy. So, I just really enjoyed being on, and I look forward to being on here again in the future. So, thank you guys.
Definitely. No, like I said, it's always a pleasure having you on. And we had you on a bunch on our old show, Nerdmageddon, and it's really a shame that it's taken us 54 episodes to get you on, but on episode 108, 54 more from now, we're going to have you on once more. So Oh gosh, if I forget and episode 108 comes around and we don't have you on. So, roast me in the comments if it's episode 108 and Jeff is not a guest. And so
I really hope that we have nerdy, sweaty fans that can have that will have that memory, and it'll be episode 108. And we're like, oh, we're proceeding just as normal. And they go,
Actually, Jeff isn't here, and we've been waiting 54 episodes for Jeff to arrive. So, yeah, one final thank you, Jeff. Thanks so much. And I am looking forward to talking more with you on and off the pod. So that's been our episode 54. Thank you, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.